Welcome, Gille, to the Rusty Bug Podcast.
Right, the time now is 11:25 a.m. on Wednesday, the 27th of November. We are sitting in the boardroom at Rustenburg Girls Junior School. We have Mrs. Petersen, the principal of the school. We have the chair of the school governing body, Unathi Stofile, and we have Laura Bergh from Greenlight movement. You're probably wondering what the connection is. So Rustenburg has embarked on change. We call it, there's an IDT committee which drives what the school kind of encompasses or wants to make part of the school. Inclusivity, diversity, and transformation. I know when people hear those words, they kind of feel that they're overused words at this point, but we're going to have an informal discussion around what it means for Rustenburg Junior School. Mrs. Petersen.
Yes.
Would you like to just elaborate a little bit? I think so the school community is aware of the IDT committee, and I don't think they always know what exactly it entails and what is happening on the ground, what is happening in school. And I think part of this is to try and enlighten people and get them on board. If you can just give us a little bit about the history of the IDT committee.
Thanks, Melanie. So the inclusivity, diversity and transformation process actually started nearly 10 years ago, before I arrived at Rustenburg. So it was around 2015, 2016, when the school governing body and leadership at the time recognized that actually the school wasn't reflecting the diversity of the country in a lot of respects. I'm not just referring to race. And I think Unathi will unpack inclusivity, diversity and transformation a little later. But really that was where the journey started. And it started with the development of policy, looking at what we have as a school. The school then embarked on or engaged with a couple of different consultants around, what we need to do as a school. What are the areas that we are lacking in? Where is the lack of transformation showing up? And so that was a process. And there were a couple of surveys that were done at various points. Some that were, I think, just with staff. Remember, I wasn't here at the time, but some that were just with staff, some that included the whole school community with parents, and really just trying to understand what was happening. So that was the journey up until then, or from then. And then in around 2017 and 2018, I think things came to a head. And I'm not sure if I need to go into those details, but the school faced some repercussions in the media for various things that were happening, or the lack of transformation, if I can just put it that way. And so it was really a point where, it, as I said, it came to a head, and it was very clear that something more definitive and intentional needed to happen. And so from then on, the school started embarking on an employment equity process, and brought in a consultant around that, looking at our staffing and how we are promoting employment equity in our school. And I kind of stepped in the middle of that process.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm going to not change direction, but I just want to add, so what did this is quite a huge thing. I think no one has done it. You're kind of pioneering. What your vision for it to take it forward, this committee?
Maybe I can just speak into since I arrived.
Yes.
So, when I arrived, it was in the middle of the first employment equity process, when I think as a staff we were just starting to grapple with all of the issues and barriers around employment equity. And so as myself as the principal and as the school governing body at the time, we looked at what we were doing and realized that there was a lot more that we weren't doing. And so we embarked on an organizational development process. And the purpose of that was really looking at whole school alignment, because I think the approach was good in a lot of respects, but it was quite fragmented, and there was a lot of different things that were happening, but they weren't quite tying together. And so we needed a process where we looked at a whole school alignment, where we tried to get as many people on board, aligned in terms of the thinking and the vision as you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so that was a process that led us into developing our 5-year strategic plan, which covers all aspects of the school. And one of that is around the IDT survey. And so the IDT committee has actually been around for quite some time before I arrived at the school. And it's taken various twists and turns over the years and become far more established in I think, in terms of what we're doing and the objectives and the mandate really going forward. And so the vision really is to continue building on those things and to continue being a school that is holding up the mirror and that is constantly looking at how we can be more diverse and inclusive in terms of reflecting the diversity of our country.
Okay. I think I'm going to jump to the governing body chair to just add a little bit about what you, as being the leader of the school from the governing body side and governance, what IDT means for Rustenburg Girls Junior School.
Thanks so much, Melanie. I'm going to try and define it in a more practical sense. So starting off with diversity and working along a bit of a continuum in terms of what we want to achieve. So diversity refers to how diverse our school community is. It talks to people from various backgrounds. And in the South African context, we always start with, race, gender, ethnicity. But beyond that, it's about culture. It's about different learning abilities. It's about different languages. It's about different families, as well as, upbringing. Family structure is not what we, used to, or you can't define it just as a nuclear family. So it's a whole range, and facets when we talk about diversity and the levers or opportunities we have to bring us that in terms of deliberately seeking that diversity is through our admissions, but also through our recruitment process in ensuring that we apply enough rigor to bring us the diversity that we're looking for. Then it's not just diversity for diversity's sake in terms of the numbers and the representativity that you see. It's now about how do we ensure equity and access. And that talks about the process of ensuring that every learner here, every staff member here has got access and opportunity to realize their full potential whilst they are with us. So that means that then in all of our strategies, we apply enough rigor and ensure that there is a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, our policies, but also our day-to-day practices. Then, because we have everybody here in all of their diversity, how do we include? And again, that's a deliberate process, and that's an act of bringing everybody together in a manner that celebrates all of their backgrounds, but also harnessing each individual contribution while we have everybody here. So it, again, talks to what do we have, as facilities, what do we have as practices, and being, again, deliberate in ensuring that those are inclusive. And that's quite a key aspect, Melanie, because we don't accept or we don't want, rather, people to assimilate. We've also got to learn and change what we have, here for the better. And we do this because we want people, staff, learners, families, that whilst they are here at Rustenburg, to express a lived experience that says that I belong. And I can see that I belong. I can feel that I belong if I attend the various sporting activities, if I attend the cultural events, if I attend the parent community engagements, if I walk into the front office at, receptions, just that general sense that I am in an environment in which I belong. That is our intent.
And I feel welcome.
Correct.
When I first step in there.
Correct.
Well. Okay. I think you, I was going to go to tell us more about the role of the committee.
Okay. Certainly I can do that. The role of the committee is to enable the delivery of the 5-year strategic plan. I think that's very important. It anchors us in a clear vision and direction in terms of where the school wants to go. So in that context then, if you look at the strategic plan, IDT is cross-cutting in terms of that. So in other words, it's got to be a key part of how we view academics, how we view, the curriculum, how we view sports and culture, how we view school traditions and policies. So in ensuring that then, and that everybody contributes meaningfully to that, we need to ensure, or part of our role as an IDT committee is to ensure that the entire school community actually understands and is aware of that particular vision. And I talk to contributing meaningfully, and perhaps the opportunity to do so now is that the IDT committee is not a closed committee of voted for or selected, parents. So yes, it is an official part of the committees of the SGB. So it is also chaired by myself as a representative member of the SGB, but it's open to all of the parents to participate in that community, to give voice. Yes, we look and lean into experts, but that is an opportunity for parents to participate in terms of giving meaningfully. So we also then meet to drive out certain activities, as I've said, that are laid out in the strategic plan of the school, but also not meeting for meeting's sake, to ensure that we actually drive proper measurement and due diligence in terms of all of the activities that occur in multiple facets of school life.
Yeah.
One of the mechanisms that we have custodianship of as an IDT committee is the delivery of the IDT survey, which Laura will touch more of. And in terms of all of the integrated way in which IDT is delivered, it's to ensure continuous improvement of that and drive more towards the outcome that we want.
Yeah. And that process of moving forward, making progress, making change.
I think before we jump into that, just to add that obviously as the IDT committee, it's not just parent representatives that are there, it's staff representatives as well, because the staff voice is very important in terms of driving the process and also having their voices heard with the direction of the school and what we are aiming to do through IDT.
Yeah. So, I sit on the committee as well, and I think initially, because I came in at a time where, the committee had been around for a while. I think I joined last year, and so I wasn't quite sure, where it did fit in, and I'm beginning to see a bigger picture, and actually I can see a shift in things in the short period of time that I've been there. And I think it's important for staff to sit on the committee as well and give, as you said, give our contribution, because it does impact everyone. And so now I'm going to move to Laura, who plays a very key role in, I think, the information or the data that the committee gets to be able to see what change is happening, what things we need to work on, what is not working. So a welcome to Laura Bergh from Greenlight Movement. And I think I'm going to ask you to just introduce us a little bit to Greenlight Movement.
Hi there. So yes, I am Laura Bergh. I'm the Chief Enabler for the Greenlight office. The Greenlight office is a small organization with a very large footprint across South Africa. And what we do is we help organizations to measure and understand and evidence any form of social development, social impact. And that includes social empowerment, social justices, that sort of thing. And we've been going for the last 9 years or so. There are very few organizations in this country that actually work with the concept of social impact because it is so intangible to measure. And this was our very first foray, interestingly enough, into the whole space of diversity and inclusion and transformation. Previously, before, we have worked with poverty and disability and resilience, and even in teacher well-being and tertiary student well-being, but our very first foray into diversity.
Wow, okay. So then I'm going to dive into, so when Mrs. Petersen, I assumed, approached you, what was your thoughts about, do I want to be a part of this? Do I want to drive it?
Well, it was very captivating, a very compelling story for a school to approach you and say, we know that you can actually measure social impact and you do it really well. However, is it possible to use the Greenlight framework to surface the concept of whether a school is managing to enable and empower and encourage and influence its body, its community body and stakeholders to reach for a better way of being within the school, in connection specifically with diversity, transformation and inclusion. And that was, as I said, a very captivating and compelling question. We're not specialists in the space of diversity at all. We're really good at social impact. And so when we were approached, it was a case of, yep, we're up for it.
Okay. And then, so Belinda asked you, what were the parameters or the brief that she kind of gave you in terms of what the school needed?
Well, the very first thing to do was we sat down and we said, what is it you actually want? What's the end game here? And we got to draw on this gorgeous big board, what is the end game for the rusty bugs? In other words, how do we want them to feel, to think, to experience the school so that when they leave the school, there is a specific way about the daughters of this community that is very, very clear that they've had an experience at Rustenburg that has been pretty unique and really special and almost created and made them future fit for their roles as they go forward into society and into secondary education.
Okay, I'm just going to go on to, you mentioned future fit. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So I think the big thing is that when they come to school every day, are they comfortable in their own skins? Do they know that they can be true to themselves? Are they used to socializing with others that are different to themselves? Are they comfortable in situations that they may find challenging because they are rubbing shoulders with other students who come from different backgrounds, different racial heritages, different traditions, different ways of thinking?
Yeah.
And that is part of preparing our children to be future fit. It's to be part of a picture of the health and well-being that we want for all people and all citizenry of South Africa. How do we grow our children to fit that space in the future?
Okay. Now I'm going to go a little bit to the surveys, the actual surveys. So this is the second year that the survey has been run.
It is.
And that is to feed into how we're going to create that or move towards that future fit young lady. What did you find?
So before we go into that, I think I just want to clarify why the survey was done from our perspective. The three main aims here is that Rustenburg wanted to know if their efforts were making a difference. That 5-year strategy that they were going to put in place, was it actually making a difference? Then secondly, what is working and what's not working when it came to moving that needle of transformation? In other words, what was that sweet spot? And then thirdly, if there were any gaps in their strategy and the processes that they were putting in place. And so it's really important to take that into consideration, because whatever the data comes out, and we love data because data informs decision making, and whatever came out of the surveys was going to feed back to the committee and to the broader school about what people were thinking and feeling, and allowing them to express themselves in a safe space, because the survey was done anonymously. And so what came out was, wow, it was kind of being hit with a tidal wave, I think, hey, ladies?
Yeah.
It was I think parents and students and the whole school body, the teaching body and support body, used this survey as a platform to share how they were thinking and feeling at this moment in time. And was a lot more than just IDT-related information that came out. It was so much about so many other things. But what it really told us is that people needed a platform, a way to talk, to express themselves, and feel safe about it, where they weren't going to be judged for their opinions or for what they were saying.
Okay. So in terms of numbers and data, is there anything that you would like to share with us that kind of stood out?
Okay, yes, I can. So first of all, the survey consisted of 7 particular dimensions, and within those 7 dimensions, there were 30 very specific indicators. And it's very much set for a school environment around IDT. And the kind of information that came out was quite specific to the 3 groups. So we ran a survey that we did with the parent body as well as the teaching body, and then a separate survey with the students that had been created using language that was different, children-friendly language versus adult-friendly. And so there was 2 different sets of information that came out across the 3 groups. And I think if we look at the learners first, what was quite phenomenal to see is that the concept of bullying and social dynamics was something that came out as quite a high priority to be looked at.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, the top indicator amongst all 3 groups of parents, student body, as well as the teaching body, was an indicator called My Voice. It's an indicator that refers to how people are feeling about whether it is a safe space for them to talk, where they're going to be heard, where they're going to be listened to without judgment. And in this day of social media and the cancel culture and all of that kind of thing that's happening, this was it was an eye-opener, but also not too surprising.
Okay. Can I ask you, so in terms of doing the first survey and the second one in terms of voice, was there any change across that?
No, there actually wasn't. Not much change at all.
Okay, so that indicates that we would need to, that's an area to work on.
It is, but it's an area that is, I'm noticing across South Africa, it's an area that is hitting a lot of our society at a higher, broader, deeper level than simply what's happening at a school. It is something that is pervasive in all our lives at the moment. This feeling like we have a lack of a voice, a lack of judgment when our voice is heard, and being judged for our opinions, and being nervous to being able to express ourselves.
Can I add?
Yeah.
So to, yes, what Laura has surfaced, our observation, as Laura initially mentioned, that in the first survey, there was a huge array of issues that did come up. Yeah. A lot of them were operational, and things to do with, tuck shop, the recycling initiative, and so on and so forth. So, as I say, operational, not necessarily related to IDT, but it mattered that, having received the feedback, that we actually actioned those as burning issues. And so in that context, then we didn't have a deliberate strategy or focus on IDT in particular, but rather to deal with those operational issues and put them into place. Happy to say that all of those were addressed. So to Laura's point in presenting the data of the second survey, that it has integrity. Certainly what you see as no progress does talk to the fact that there wasn't a deliberate focus on IDT in particular. And so with this year's survey and analysis and the engagement that we've had, we're certainly now going deeper and actually tackling the IDT issues.
Okay.
Perhaps then I could just add to what Unathi is then saying is, just to put it into context, so last year, August 2023 was the first survey that we had done after, and I need to just acknowledge the work of the IDT committee at the time with Laura. It took us 18 months to develop that, and we developed it from scratch. So it was weekly meetings that we had to first of all construct that survey into what it is now, and also just bearing in mind contextually, we, in terms of our strategic plan and our whole school organizational development process, that we had made the decision via our strategic plan to do this annually, because we wanted to ensure that we were keeping our finger on the pulse in terms of what is happening in our school, what is a lived experience, as Laura was speaking about earlier. So it was very intentional for us to do that. And, also just bearing in mind, we didn't know what we were going to expect with the first survey. It was literally just, we're putting this out there, we're getting this anonymous feedback, and then we're going to have to sit down. And it took us quite some time, I think, 4 to 5 months to just grapple with the data that had come out and what we were going to do with it and make some decisions around that. And also, bearing in mind that we did have a change of, all public schools in March this year elected a new governing body, and with that is also the committees change as well. It's not necessarily the same people that are on committees. Often there are a few of the same, but new people come on board, and so that also slowed things down a little bit, but I think in a good way, because it gave us a time just to breathe and reflect more intentionally and thoroughly around the data that came through in the first survey. And so when the second survey came around and we didn't see much change, I know Laura speaks quite strongly about how that gives the data integrity, because it means that in the first survey, people didn't just go, oh, well, this is wrong with the school, or this is what they experience, or these are the things that are going well. But because we didn't really do much IDT focus or IDT related things in the past year or from year to year, it actually speaks to the fact that there's consistency in terms of the data and what we were getting, and people were saying the same thing and having the same experiences. And so now I think this is something Unathi can probably give more input into, is now it gives us more meat to kind of develop a more specific and strategic IDT plan going forward in terms of how we're going to address those bigger issues. So I think, contextually, one might think, oh gosh, nothing changed in a year, but actually it was quite deliberate on our part to be doing a survey annually, because also if we're doing it for, having longer periods of time in between, let's say 18 months to 2 years, how much do we have our finger on the pulse in terms of what people are experiencing? So it's just kind of also putting that into context as well in terms of the survey results. And I think also when I looked at the first set of results, I think none of us knew what to expect, because, this was the first time it was being done. And so I think there were some things that I was expecting to come in at a much more, like I don't know if Laura spoke about this earlier, but much more red in terms of the responses and then green and the yellow. And so I was expecting it to be a lot more red than it came out to be. So there were a lot more greens and yellows, which made me go, oh, actually maybe things aren't, there are things that are happening, there are things that are going well, and people are seeing that, they're experiencing it. And so for me, the first survey didn't really start at a low base. It actually started at a much higher base than I think we all anticipated. And then it's just grappling with that and, of course, getting the second survey results and analyzing that data and then looking at a more specific, nuanced IDT strategy going forward.
Okay, thank you. So I think we've spoken a little bit about the trends that came through. Are there any other highs or lows that you would like to, or that stood out for you that you would like to highlight?
I think the high from my side, and perhaps talks to the governance that's in place around this, is the fact that this is embedded or institutionalized. So we talk about the 5-year strategic plan, and in there, as I've said before, is contained the vision and the plan. So despite even the changes that took place this year, it is embedded and institutionalized, as I said. So it continues, whoever it is that comes into place. So with the acknowledgement that Belinda has just spoken about, Gary Winslow and team, who were in the previous IDT committee, really did a sterling job in terms of the development of this metric. And stepping into that, the groundwork's being done. It's a matter of really refining and improving and continuing. And so as the next, SGB and the next chair of the IDT comes along, it's to continue that. So it's not centered around an individual or a particular governing body. It's a vision of the school. And so it continues. So that's a big plus for me in what the school has been able to achieve.
Okay, so it's already kind of making its way into becoming a part of the school.
Correct. It's a key part and parcel of what we do every day, whether you're a governor, whether you're in SMT or just, the staff. It all feeds into
the kind of school structure.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. And I think also, the fact that it doesn't, when we think about IDT, it's not just around race, religion, culture. I think, both Laura and Unathi spoke into that earlier. But the survey addresses all aspects or as many of the aspects of the school as possible. So it's not just how we're addressing issues of race or social cohesion or social justice. It's in all aspects of the school. So the survey doesn't only address, it's not one-sided.
Yep.
Yeah.
It looks at the practices, it looks at our curriculum, it looks at what's happening in the classroom, what's happening on the playground, the experiences of our staff, the views of different people in different spaces within the school in terms of access to sport and cultural activities, music, etc. So it covers quite a broad range, and that's also very intentional. And I think that for me, for us, the vision is not about, there's the school and then there's IDT that's separate. IDT must filter through and be infused in every aspect of the school so that it becomes just naturally part of what we do.
Yeah.
That we don't have to consciously be intentional about, okay, we must think about IDT when we're doing this or that. It just becomes part of what we do, whether we are a staff member, in whatever role we play, whether we're teacher or admin or whatever that is, whether we are one of the learners, whether it's a parent. For all of us, IDT becomes the lens through which we live and we exist as Rustenburg.
Okay. The word that comes to mind is intuitive.
Yes.
It's part of who we are.
Exactly.
Yes. I would just... Oh, sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead.
It's like we're playing tag now with Belinda. I think in terms of what Belinda has outlined as the multifacets of the school in which, IDT is hardwired, I just want to perhaps touch on some of those achievements just to bring it to life. So as mentioned earlier, diversity we achieve through admissions and the recruitment process of the staff. But also excitingly, from an academics point of view, as a school, we've been grappling with the implementation of Xhosa as a first additional language. It's been done successfully in the foundation phase. The challenge is to, further roll it out into the intermediate and the senior phase. And certainly that committee, the language committee, is in the heart and the meat of grappling with just how we get it right. We've had, review of policies through the HR and the legal committees, and we know that there's quite a number of transformation-specific policies that we'd have to review also in the new year. In terms of school traditions and policies, we engaged a few months ago in this podcast around the launch of the school song. We've also done some changes to the way we address uniform. So that now, learners are open to wear, winter or summer uniform, but also where there's specific religious preferences in terms of uniform, those are open. For instance, wearing the hijab as part of the uniform without necessarily having to apply for concessions has been a big step. Community engagement, has been great. Outside of the IDT survey feedback itself, we've had great parent engagement in terms of the vision, mission, and motto of the school. The PTA also has been instrumental in launching a new part of their calendar, the long table event. Which is great. It allows for families to come together in a space to share, safely about, who they are, the culture, and it's so meaningful and powerful. In that space, in that we break together and get to share in each other's cultures in a safe and intimate environment as just some of the things that we've been able to achieve in this year.
Okay. I'm sure we're going to continue with the long table. I'm excited about that.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
That's something to continue. Just some of the lows or things that need to be worked on.
I think for me, Unathi touched on parent engagement as being a high, but I think
one.
In that particular instance, yes. But I think generally, I would certainly like to see more school community engagement around conversations, around grappling with issues and doing so, like Unathi spoke about, in a safe and a brave space, because sometimes it takes a lot of bravery and courage to have those conversations. And to be willing and open to listen and to learn. I think, those are, for me, I would like to see more of that. I would like to see more input around various issues. When we do send out surveys like the IDT survey, and we do have other mechanisms that we gather information from our school community as well. So it's not just the survey. We do have school community meetings and various staff engagements that are specifically related to staff. Learning engagements and so on. But I think for me, I would like to see more participation there and really having more voices being heard in those spaces so that we're able to really touch on those aspects that people, and address things that the people within our school community might be struggling with or find challenging, or perhaps have brilliant ideas that they're just not feeling like they can say, or there isn't space for them to say those things. So I think it's just continuing on that journey and having certainly more people participate in the survey itself next year, August. And then, I think just encouraging community engagement,
the parents, the kids and staff to participate more. I'm going to head off to, so where to from here, Belinda?
Oh, there's lots to do. There's always lots to do. And so I think... going forward as part of this survey, certainly we will continue to do it annually. I think it is important, and to, like I said, keep our finger on the pulse. And we really excited that Greenlight movement or Greenlight office is on this journey with us. And I do also want to just acknowledge, the key role that Laura has played in just helping us unpack the data and just making sense of it for us as a school and I just want to thank her for all of her input around that, because it's been such a valuable exercise. And I think also what Laura does is, doesn't just give us the data and go, okay, well, you're on your own. She comes back in and assists us with unpacking the data, but then also giving feedback, because that's something that's really important, is every time we do a survey like this, is giving the feedback and saying, okay, this is what came out, these are the things that we're addressing, this is where the needle has shifted, but this is where we really need to sort of put our shoulder to the wheel and really drive things. So, that will be ongoing, I think, and from that is just recognizing the areas and the spaces where we need to continue doing training, as it comes up with different topics, that we keep, having those conversations and building understanding around inclusivity, diversity, and transformation. And as society keeps evolving, it's for us to also, as a school community, to keep evolving. Just because we're doing specific things now, it doesn't mean that in 10 years' time it's still going to look this way, because
it's going to be different.
Society, South Africa is going to look very different. And how, as a school, are we creating a space that reflects that, but also, like Laura was speaking about, being future fit. It's about the goals, but we also need to be learning and growing so that we can support their growth and development, so that when they do end up in those spaces as young adults and adults, that they can engage meaningfully in society and be able to contribute meaningfully. We don't just want rusty bugs to leave you at the end of grade 7 and go, okay, well, that's the end of my rusty bug journey, or wherever they go to after year. But actually that they recognize that as young as they are, they have a voice and they can contribute meaningfully, and we are giving them the tools to be able to do that. But as the adults in the space, the staff, the parents, that is our responsibility. That's not on them. We've got to create the space to do that. And so I think going forward, it's just to continue keep our ears to the ground through the survey and the other mechanisms, and really be intentional about how we shift the needle to keep that vision of what we want to see in the future.
Is there anything else? I'm going to ask for final comments. I think we need to round off.
I just wanted to say that going back to that word intentional that Belinda's just mentioned now, it takes a really brave organization, a brave group of people to be willing to look in the mirror and to ask themselves, how are we doing? And building something like this metric, this particular process, into the DNA of their organization is allowing them to gather, using technology and data, to gather insights that sometimes may hurt and sometimes they can celebrate. But whatever comes out, it's allowing them to use voices from the ground that need to be heard, and actually working on what they want to see come through in the future. And that's an amazing feat. And as I said, it takes a really brave, courageous entity to do that. And I'm really, I've been so impressed with my journey with Rustenburg over the last 2 years, that we really, I can't wait to see the kind of delicious data that starts to come through year after year as we see things start to shift and change, and as society shifts and changes. But at least now we've got a voice to the ground, and we've got a way to really tangibly surface and hear what people say there is happening, what they need, and to be able to respond to it.
Unathi, would you like to, any final comments from you?
Sure. It's much in alignment to Belinda and Laura. I think essentially what we're saying here, maybe word of the day, is agency. And the ability to be able to exercise that agency. But that comes with a responsibility that as you do exercise, that it's not to harm the next person. So everyone has that right, but you do so without harming or undermining or leaving the other in a worse off place. And I think, yes, there's continuous improvement. We've done a bit of a deeper dive with Laura, which surfaces out that there are still families that are feeling excluded. So that talks to a more deliberate strategy, in fact, a more nuanced approach also in how we do things in the coming year. So, lots of planning and a strategy to build in the new year. But also engagement, I suppose, that we need. We are looking for more creative ways in which to do that. This is an exciting platform because we pick up as trends recurring themes that come across in the survey in terms of academic, sport, uniform, and we have addressed those in our engagement, feedback engagement forums, but they talk to a level of awareness, perhaps, or access in terms of where people get that information. So that's another plan that we talk about. In the initial planned parent engagement, we had some new parents also come into the fore. So it does talk to creating a level of awareness. I was almost going to say build a campaign. That's not it. But it's that true and authentic engagement as parents come in, understanding what it is that they've bought into the vision. So what do we do whilst we are here? And that the survey is there as an engagement platforms, just as some of the things that we need to do to get the word out there. And hopefully that drives participation. As a last point from my side, it's to thank the team. As we talked about, the IDT committee, apart from myself on the SGB, is really a community of staff and parents that volunteer and give of their expertise and their time. It's a wealth of knowledge and experience, in the room. That's not to say that we are not looking for more contributors and participants on that forum, but really, in terms of what's been achieved in the last 2 years, outstanding.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up now. So you mentioned campaign for 2025 is parents, students, staff. Please get involved in the conversations and participate so we can move towards creating a Rustenburg Junior School, which, what is the word? Which I'm thinking authentic, so that we're all authentic, we feel welcome, we feel there's a space here for us. Okay, Mrs. Petersen, any final comments from you?
I have a lot to say, always do. But I think for me, this particular process, the organizational development process, the whole school strategic alignment, the IDT survey, is about Rustenburg, but it's also not about Rustenburg. I think it goes far beyond that. And I think, when I look at education in our country, there's a lot that still needs to happen in terms of growing what we do and developing what we do and transforming education. This is not just about the schools in the southern suburbs of Cape Town who need to transform because they form a Model C schools. This is about education transforming. Yeah. This is about schools reflecting the South African society in different ways. And so we've been very intentional in our learning on this journey. And trust me, there's been a lot of speed bumps and roadblocks and things along the way. But it has been an enriching experience thus far. And as I said, we're going to go into the future continuing with this work. But it is about how we can shift the needle, not just for Rustenburg, but for all schools and for all children in the country. It's around how, and I mean, we have spoken about this before, but I don't think we're anywhere near this yet. But we don't just want this tool to be something for Rustenburg. That was never our intention. It was always going to be something that eventually other schools could access and use to be able to hold the mirror up for themselves and have a look at what they're doing. And so I don't know when we'll get to that point just yet, because I think there's still a lot of work that we need to do in terms of the IDT survey and the tool itself. But that excites me because I think, when we are too narrowly focused on what we're just doing in our little corner as Rustenburg, we are not actually, we're not focused on the bigger picture ourselves. And so while there are a lot of things that we specifically are doing to move the needle for our own particular school community, it is also about what are we doing to shift the needle for education in our country.
Okay. Wow. On that note, I'm going to end. And it's exciting. We look to 2025, having that long table gathering. I'm definitely coming with my cook sisters.
Yep.
To have conversations and meet with the families. And I hope that there will be more families joining us there. Thank you very much.